welcome to In the Loop. I'm Shane Finster, and today we are joined by Beau Evans with the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Thanks
Good
for
morning.
having me.
Thank you, sir. So I believe we're going to hop into the topic of ATV and motorcycle safety. But first of all, for those who are unfamiliar, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, anything to deal with law enforcement initiatives for highway safety, child passenger safety, car seat safety, seatbelt safety, pretty much you name it. With highway safety, we are doing public education and trying to promote safety across the whole entire region.
Nice, very good. So with respect to ATV and motorcycle safety, in Appalachia, it's very common to see ATVs and motorcycles either on the road, on trailers. It's a very popular pastime in this area. So let's lead off with some of the fundamentals when it comes to ATV and motorcycle safety. What are some of the basic requirements that someone needs to look into when choosing one of these pastimes?
Well, the main thing is to make sure that if you are allowed to ride on the public roadways with an ATV, you need to make sure that you have an ATV that is roadworthy. You need to make sure that you have a license for either the motorcycle or ATV, but mainly the ATV motorcycles you have to have a license for those, a license plate number. And you also have to have an actual endorsement on your license to actually ride a motorcycle along the roadway. The next thing would be to make sure that you have a helmet, and they have to be DOH approved helmets. Some states don't have helmet laws, but in West Virginia we do. But Ohio, there isn't one, and Kentucky as well. So those, when you cross state lines, be aware that what laws lie within which district. That way, you're following the rules and you're also being safe.
Great. So speaking of the DOH approved helmets, an example I always think of is the Chrome Dome helmet, the one that just comes above the ears. And I know results may vary on whether those are approved or not, but how would someone know if their helmet is actually approved?
Should have a tag on the back of it that says DOH on it, or DOT. Instead of, depending on where you are, it could say DOH or DOT.
Okay.
So that would be how they would find out.
So with respect to licensing, I honestly didn't know that ATVs required licensing in areas where it's legal to ride them on paved roads. Is there a specific or different application process for licensing an ATV or motorcycle than traditional motor vehicle, for example?
Well, with ATVs, and this depends on just wherever you are. Some cities, municipalities, townships, they actually have laws in place on the books where you have to go through a process. But there is no real state requirement or state law that makes the individual have to sign up for a license.
Okay.
But the individual townships can go a step further than what the state law is, and they can actually apply through their own process.
Okay.
But overall, the main goal is to make sure that the ATV is roadworthy if it's going to be used on the road. Highway safety does not like to have ATVs on the roadway, mainly because they are not traditionally a vehicle that would be allowed on the roadway. In the past, they've not been allowed to be on the roadway, but now some municipalities are allowing their residents to do that as a cheaper alternative to actually having to buy a car. And a lot of folks are using ATVs to get around from point A to point B, and so they use the roadway. Unfortunately, it's not as safe. But if you are going to use an ATV, make sure you wear a helmet, especially wear a helmet.
Now, do the helmet laws work similarly as they would with motorcycles in the states that require them versus states that do not?
It depends on from state to state.
Okay.
But yes, they traditionally would follow the same
Okay.
guidelines of having a motorcycle helmet.
I see. So we've talked to safety with respect to the folks who are in control of the vehicle. Let's talk about the equipment itself. We've talked helmet, driver. What are the regulations, generally speaking, for either an ATV or a motorcycle to comply with safety regulations on the road? Turn indicator laws, brake lights. I mean, things like that's where I'm going.
Right. Motorcycles, everything needs to be the same as a vehicle, except the one exception is they don't have a seatbelt on.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a seatbelt on a motorcycle, but your next best protection is your helmet, and that is a requirement. But depending on which state you're in, it may not be a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So always double check and look at what the state law has on the books for those types of vehicles. But yes, brake lights, turn signals, a light, a horn, those types of things need to be on a motorcycle. Now, an ATV, it's a little different. It's not meant to be driven on the roadway, so it doesn't have all the features that a typical vehicle on a roadway should have. But typically you'll find a headlight and brake lights on an ATV. And of course wear your helmet, because on an ATV there is no seatbelt.
Right.
Now some all-terrain vehicles, side-by-sides or quads, UTVs,
Yeah.
those actually do have seatbelts. And doors and kind of encase you.
Windshields, the whole works. So.
Yeah, so those are a little bit more vehicle type,
Mm-hmm.
but they're still considered in the class of an ATV.
So it wouldn't be required per se to add these things if they don't come pre-equipped from the factory, such as corner markers and brake lights.
Right. If you're planning on riding them on the roadway, it's best to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're thinking of your safety. Even if the law, bottom line, even if the law does not, there is no law in the books. The law does not protect someone from those legalities. It's best to be safe, and that's the bottom line. So the more bells and whistles you have on it, probably the more safe you're going to be. But the recommendation is, don't drive your ATVs and your quads, UTVs on the roadway, even though, you're trying to get from point A to point B. It's just not a smart thing to do, as, if you get involved in a vehicle accident, you're on an ATV with another vehicle. It's an actual vehicle, not another ATV. It's possible that could have very big life-threatening injuries on that, because you have a smaller mass hitting a larger mass, and that could cause a lot of damage.
And I suspect, when it comes to the manufacturers building these vehicles, they're installing safety features for utilizing them for their intended purpose, which is generally off-road, if we're speaking ATV, UTV, utility vehicles, as opposed to motorcycles, which some of those models are designed for on-road. So I could certainly see there where off-road versus on-road use is certainly going to vary on a collision type event. Mm-hmm. And again, we've discussed that municipalities and state laws vary on where you could take. I want to stay in the vein of the UTV or off-road vehicle conversation. Are there certain highway systems that by default would not permit the use of what would be designed initially as an off-road vehicle?
Yes, federal interstates, any federal highways that link other states to other states. So you have Interstate 64 that passes right through the area here. You have some other major U.S. routes, 51, and some of the others. Those and most likely those are marked before you get onto them of no vehicles allowed that are ATV, bicycle, pedestrian, those types of things. I know that for a fact for the interstate. Some of the local roads may actually have signs that ATVs, UTVs are not allowed. That's depending on how the state has deemed that road.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the federal highway system typically will have none of those vehicles are allowed to be on there.
So could we also consider that is there something in place requiring a minimum speed attainment? Do they have to be able to reach a certain speed to, let's say, go on, I don't know, a road that would permit UTV or ATV travel?
As far as that goes, somebody in the DOH field could determine the qualifications for a type of vehicle to be on that roadway. But typically what they're going to look for is can it retain a high rate of speed.
I see.
You know, so the interstate, obviously, that's a higher rate of speed. Somebody on a bicycle is probably not going to go quite as fast. Motorcycles, though, are allowed on the interstate. Those can actually withhold a speed. And those are, deemed by the federal government too as a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
ATVs are not, and typically ATVs can't go quite that fast. They can go pretty fast, but not quite that fast, and be able to maintain control and safely. So that's why a lot of vehicles do not meet those requirements. But the ones that do are allowed access onto the roadway. But before, determining if a vehicle meets those standards, that would have to be something with the manufacturer versus the actual DOH being able to determine, yes, that vehicle is an allowable vehicle for the roadway. Plus, you have ATVs that are got big tires on them. They've got a lot of different types of tread on them that could damage the roadway. So it's possible that it could cause damage. Thus resulting in another accident, somebody hitting something that fell off of one of them, or if mud glops come off and then people hit those on the roadway. So, that's another safety issue that comes along with that.
I see. Well, the final topic that I think would be worth raising here on ATV and motorcycles would be safety in the circumstances of motorcycle that perhaps the safety or turn indicators and lighting is not functioning properly for some reason, and or a UTV, ATV, or whatever that is deemed roadworthy in the proper municipality or state. How do people ensure that folks know what they're planning to do if the lighting isn't working properly?
One thing that they should be aware of is the actual turn signals by hand. If you're, and this is for any vehicle, if your car decides to quit working, your turn signals quit working, then you need to make sure that you know the proper hand signals of turning right, turning left, and stopping. Those can be found if you go to NHTSA.gov. You can look up a whole bunch of information on how to properly turn using hand signals instead of the electronic signals when the electronic ones fail.
Which could easily happen, like you say, in any type of motorized vehicle, not just ATV or motorcycle. So, well, Beau, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming in today. So for Armstrong, I'm Shane Finster. Make it a great day.